Welcome to Prescribed by Dr. Nathan Goodyear, where integrative oncology meets holistic healing. This podcast is your home for the latest in innovation, exploration, and elevation in all areas of integrative oncology, medicine, health, wellness, and beyond. Join me and a host of other innovators as we go from practicing to prescribing. Your daily dose of wellness begins now. Welcome to another Prescribed by Dr. Nathan Goodyear podcast. This has been, it's only Friday morning, and this has been the most amazing weekend here at the Metabolic Health Day Conference. And it's not a day, it's days, but I think it just flows really well there today. And I've got a very exciting guest I want to introduce to you. But you know, what I'm coming out of this conference already is we're starting to see a glimpse of the future, of the players in a collaboration that's already working to heal the land, but we're going to partner with, that being doctors, physicians, and advocates, and we're going to start healing people, and we're going to start healing the land that is the country, and guess what? That's going to spread to other countries. But it takes a lot of different players. It takes a lot of different silos, if you will. Naisha has that term. She said silos. And so I won't steal that from her, but I think it's a very good one because when you talk about silos, they are solid, they're strong, they stand tall, but they only influence what's right there and what they hold. But when you bring silos together, you have something that expands, that becomes exponential, something that builds a legacy. So today, or right now, we have Cindy Kennedy. Now, Cindy Kennedy is going to be very influential. I don't know if you're on the front, but you're definitely the driver behind the back. So let me give you just a little bit of bio about Cindy. She's CEO of Terrain Holding Company, parent of MydaVeda, Mtomics, and Metabolic Regen. She is co-founder of Metabolic Terrain Institute of Health. You know, when you deep dive on people and you see what other people say about them, it really tells you about who they are. So here's what others have said about Cindy. She's an entrepreneur. She's a pioneer. She transforms businesses and organizational growth, and I love this, and strategic scaling. Whew. If you're in the business world and you don't understand scaling, you're going nowhere. And but this was before you got into health innovation. I love that word, and we're going to talk about it. Major expansions in the tech and consulting sector, but she transitioned to health innovation. And this was driven by a personal passion to purpose, I believe, for integrative wellness. You co-founded MTIH, Metabolic Terrain Institute of Health, because you wanted to advance a terrain-based medicine approach that targets metabolic and mitochondrial function. And I want to touch on that word terrain too. You reimagine cancer and chronic disease care through terrain-based root cause healing. Cindy, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Those are big words.
Well, yeah, they're words that can be confusing, right? It can almost be a word salad. It's like, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to get at?
They speak to my heart about what you do. That's like, and I would say all of those are characteristics of a leader. And there are different types of leader. You know, I always get tickled when I meet people. This will be from the male perspective because men tend to do this. They beat their chest and they go, I'm an alpha male. That immediately tells me you want to be an alpha male, but you're not. Just like leader, when somebody says, I'm a leader, and then you look and you go, don't see anybody following.
Right.
But I find that the leaders that lead quietly, but lead boldly, are those that have the biggest impact of change. I don't know if that's you because we know each other just a little bit, but my research on you, my conversations with others about you, you seem to be a silent force. And I think your history and your work reflects that. And I may be way off,
of that, but that's what I take. So what did I get wrong there in your history and everything else?
Yeah, I mean, great summary, and thank you for that. I started. What I will say is, I believe that I'm an executor and a problem solver. So if I see a problem that needs to be solved, let's solve it. And how are you going to go about doing that? I started out in the tech industry. I was in the tech industry for 27 years, and I also then kind of went through my own personal health issues and kind of crisis. At the same time, I was running organizations, managing, individual, trying to make revenue, trying to hit numbers, and doing all these things. And I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. I went to lots of doctors, got lots of different diagnoses, and some accurate, some not accurate. And I actually was not able to heal until I figured it out myself, and I was able to implement things. And that's what really made me open my eyes to this kind of broken healthcare system. At the same time, I found out that I was going to be a grandmother, and my daughter then had a child, and then she got sick. And then she has it's crazy. All three of my grandchildren have the peanut allergies.
Oh, wow.
They've all got, none of them can have gluten. They all have really bad eczema. One of them has celiac. And so, it's like you're watching this degeneration of health. I was sick, my children are sick, now my grandchildren are sick. And what are we doing about it? Because the medical system is not where it needs to be. Clinical trials certainly aren't proving things. We're not understanding the root causes of disease. With my diagnosis and what I was dealing with, I was told it was genetic. It wasn't cancer.
That's always an easy fallback.
Yeah.
It's genetic. Meaning
genetic.
I don't have to worry about it. It's in your cards. Move on.
Yeah, well, there's nothing you can do about it. It's so disempowering. And that was not an acceptable answer. And so coming from the tech world, there's a lot of ways to solve some of these problems that we have in the healthcare industry. You just have to have the right people who want to do it.
Do you want to solve it? Meaning not you, but those that are in it, do they want to solve it?
Do they want to solve it?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that.
There are those of us that do, but I think there are those of them that don't.
I believe that 99% of doctors go into medicine to heal, right? There's a very small percentage, I think, that go in it just for the money, because it's a different bird now. But they're not given the tools to be able to heal. They're not taught the right tools, and they don't have the right data to understand what is actually going on. And so this theory that everything's a genetic disease is very disempowering. We're not looking at the degeneration of our children and our grandchildren. We're not looking at the fact that we are going to become extinct if we don't really do something about this. And now I have 3 beautiful grandchildren, and I want them to have a beautiful life.
How old are they?
They are 9, 4, and 2.
Aren't they blessings?
They are.
I can remember getting a little bit off track, but this is how, I like to connect with people, know who they are, know their heart. Is, growing up, and my wife and I have been married for 34 years now, and people would say, when grandkids come along, it's different. And it's like, well, how can it be different? They're another child, they're another baby. And then you hold your grandbaby, it's like, oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is different.
Yeah.
And the reason why I touched and stopped on that moment is because it's legacy. I think medicine has a problem, Cindy, where, and you see this now on social media, there's great push for longevity. And I think that's a noble goal. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We want long life, we want high quality of life. But I don't think the focus is on longevity. I think the focus is on legacy. Because people go, what are you talking about? I think legacy at the micro level builds longevity on the macro.
Yeah.
But then it does it for the children, the grandchildren, and the future generations. Tomorrow I'm going to present actually just a theoretical timeline of the process of disease and how it's generated over the last 60 to 70 years, and how what we're dealing with is direct unintended consequences of sloppiness on our part, and really advocation by doctors of not being advocates for doctors, for patients. So you run many different companies. And, these companies are, MydaVeda, Metabolic, Metabolic Regen. And of course, I have direct experience with Metabolic Regen, a great teaching education arm, and of course, co-founder of Metabolic Train Institute of Health. Running one company or being involved in the directionship of one company is hard enough, and you're really dealing and shuffling their four. Describe each one of them and what's their purpose and what's their mission.
Yeah, so I was going through my health journey, and my children and my grandchildren, and then my friend's daughter was diagnosed with a brain tumor. She was 10 years old, and that's what got me kind of into this whole cancer space, and then really starting to understand metabolic health. And every option for her, she's here today. She's 18. She's actually at this conference, and she's going to be at the gala tonight. An amazing, amazing story, but it was the mom's pure tenacity to find different answers. And so we started experimenting with this 10-year-old girl, not knowing anything about cancer. So I started doing a bunch of research, going to medical conferences, and we ended up finding Dr. Naisha Winters by running into another patient of hers who had a brain tumor. And so we were experimenting, and we went from experimenting to actually having a doctor that could look at everything, all of her data, and look at the different therapies and help guide. Right. But it took a financial toll on them and on the family because everything was out of pocket. And they actually had to move to a different state to get out of the system because the system wanted to do chemo and radiation for extension of life, which was not optimal. It's not what the parents were going for. So when they did that, it took a huge financial toll. And so originally I started Metabolic Train Institute of Health, MTIH, to raise funds for patient grants so that we could help support doctors like Dr. Naisha and other doctors that are doing these things. Well, I had reached out to Naisha, who at that time didn't know who I was. And I just said, hey, I want to be able to support you. And she goes, I can't continue the way things are going. She says, I need to start training other doctors because this is just getting, my wait list is a year plus long. And she said, but in school, they don't teach us business. And she said, so, I need some help. Would you work with me a little bit, kind of just volunteer and help me, maybe help me understand how to set things up? And I said, sure, no problem. And then after doing that for about 6 months, she said, actually, can we just be business partners? And I have this vision. And, I had just left the world of corporate America running consulting companies. We did 12 acquisitions in 2.5 years. We went from 100 million to $1.5 billion. And each one of those organizations, I was the president and running. And so I was exhausted. So when Naisha is saying, hey, we want to do all of these things, I had to think about it because I was still tired. I was still trying to work on bringing my energy back up. But that's why we are where we are today, because when we started educating the clinicians, to support the clinicians, to support the allied health practitioners, and to support the patients, you need a lot more systems and tools. The current system today does not support healing.
Oh, no.
So if we are going to heal patients and we are going to help facilitate that for doctors, we need to have the education platforms that can educate. If you're in the standard of care system, you have doctors of all different specialties and degrees supporting patients, and you have all of these resources. These doctors who are doing this, they don't have those types of resources, and they don't have those types of specialties. So we had to start there. We had to start with educating doctors. And then we moved into the data side. So this is actually was one of the things I'd always wanted to build a data platform, because in the tech world, we had acquired an AI company. Now, this was back in 2018, 2019, I believe. And we go into UCLA Oncology Division. And they said, we're going to build an AI platform. And so we get in there, it's everybody around the table. We've got oncologists, and we've got all of these, AI engineers and consultants. And we're saying, okay, hey, tell us what it is that you want. Well, we want to improve clinical trials by implementing AI. Okay, well, how are you going to do that? Well, we want to see what's effective, we want to put in all of this data. And I was like, great. And at that time, I had been using a ketogenic diet to heal me, and I knew that we were using ketogenic diets in cancer because that's what we had done with Phoenix. And so I said, okay, great. So what happens if a patient is doing a ketogenic diet? Oh, no. We don't recommend that, so we won't collect that data. I said, well, what if the patient's fasting during chemo? Which, you guys have published, UCLA had published studies on that.
Yes, they had.
Oh, no, but we don't recommend it, so we don't want that data. And I said, so don't build an AI platform. It's all about the data. It's all about you have an opportunity to learn from the patients themselves, learn from the patients. You're not trying to learn about, is this drug gonna have some efficacy in a small percentage of the population? You want to learn from patients. You want to learn what they're doing.
They're supporting a system and not really truly innovating to learn to help patients.
Which is, you can say a lot about AI, but the power of AI is just the power of the data.
Yeah.
And we need to collect the data from the patients. I don't care if a patient believes, they went on to some. We talk about like the DIY approach to cancer, right? Like that's Facebook blogs or these different blogs, do this, and there's crazy stuff out there.
Dr. TikTok, Dr. Instagram, you name it.
Some of it could be very valid. You're told to lick a tree 37 times a day and you feel like that's going to hit. Great. I want that data. Put that data in the system. So in our community, we have doctors of all walks of life. Right? We have MDs, NDs, DOs, NPs. We have Ayurvedic doctors. We have some Chinese medicine doctors. We have the ability to take all of their collective knowledge and what they're applying to their patients and learning from that. Yesterday, when Joe Polish was up talking, I kind of got up on stage and he said, oh, it's really easy to do little, mini studies. And he asked a question to the audience and had them raise their hand. He was like, oh, there was a study. So I said, all right, let me finish this study for you. So I said, everybody in the room who has cancer stand. And so, a good portion of the room stood up. And I said, now sit down, or I said, keep standing if you're living past your prognosis. And only about 20% sat down. So think about that. In standard of care, the average efficacy of a drug is between 15 and 30%. We had about 80% there. We need to collect the data on those patients, and we need to understand what's working so that we can apply that. We need to completely change the clinical trial model.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that could be, you talk about business. And it's appropriate that Naisha understood that she wasn't a good business person, because that's an insight most doctors don't have. I didn't. And the reason why I've learned a little bit about business is because I've failed so many times at business. And when I talk to business people, they said, well, that was not smart. I was like, well, I wish I'd known that ahead of time. But you really are a pioneer. When people think about pioneer, they think about, the actual root origin of the word means foot soldier, somebody that blazes a trail, somebody that carves a new path forward. And you're doing that, but you're doing it through the integration of things, past experiences. Thank you for giving us that journey, because I think it's really set forth your passion. Personal experience always seems to fire up passion. But then what happens is, I think in that passion, some people lose the connection and the drive to purpose. But others, it fuels a purpose and they run and they change things. And so what I've kind of been saying is that, here at this moment, and I believe we're at a moment, and again, we were talking off camera before we started, how some, I think, recognize the moment and some don't. And I just don't think that means some people are enlightened, quote unquote, or not. I think it's just awareness that we're at a precipice. Because what we've been doing is farming with pH, disease, and pharmaceutical dependency. And we've been farming a system. And that business system, if you look at it from a business model, it fuels disease. That's from the agriculture up and through
1000%.
medicine.
1000%.
But then it supports and sustains that system.
Yeah.
So that then, if anything comes in and quote unquote threatens or creates alternative ideas, it is created or labeled as alternative and then marginalized.
Yeah.
And thus, when it's alternative and marginalized, we don't have to longer engage with it, such as the term, it's genetic.
Yeah.
It's just there, so it doesn't require engagement. But in that, it has lost the connection. And it was great, Bob Jones Jr. was talking about this morning, is that farmers have lost the connection between the local individual that consumes it and the farmer that produces it, because of the supply chain in between. And I think doctors have done the same thing. What's happened is doctors have been disconnected from the patient because all the business, all the money's gotten in between. Mm-hmm. And it sounds to me like what you're doing is you're coming through and blazing a new trail to reconnect this, but to do so not within the disease model, but to do so to say, hey, actually, it's about wellness, it's about health, and that's where we need to focus. So what I say is we're at a precipice of really opportunity, that's what I see here, or a precipice of collapse, where we can basically move away from farming pH, disease and pharmaceutical dependency, and actually farm with an F, health and wellness.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got this metabolic health conference, right? We've got a lot of clinicians here, and one of our keynotes is a farmer.
Yeah, oh, I love it.
Right? We've got an environmental panel. It's so important we take care of this planet and this earth and this soil, and we nurture our soil with food that came from the soil that was nurtured. You know, we don't think about this stuff that we put in our body. These brilliant, beautiful cells can only take so much, right? They can only take so much before they start saying, you're hurting me, you know, I need some help. And I was on that pharmaceutical, you know, I think it was what led to a lot of my diagnoses, because, you know, you have one problem and then they give you one drug for that. And then now you've got another one and then you get another drug. And then next thing you know, you're taking all of these different drugs. And, you know, the decline was just continued. It was like a rollaway train. I couldn't get away from it until I stopped with everything. You know, I probably had, and I've done the math on this, I've probably had over 150 rounds of antibiotics in my life. Oh, wow. And then I wonder why my allergies are through the roof, why I have to make sure that they turn off the Glade plugins at the hotels, because I can't stomach it. You know, I get autoimmune flares and all kinds of things. Our cells can only take so much, and it's not more medicine that's going to heal this. It's nurturing the cells the same way we nurture the planet.
That's why I think the emphasis in that model is to focus on longevity, because, you know, they're like, well, we're just trying to figure out how do we add more things on top to extend the number of life, the quantity of life. And what we're talking about here is quality, but that legacy at a micro level will translate to a longevity on the macro level.
100%.
It was really interesting. It was at the largest gathering of clinical oncologists in the world in Chicago in May. ASCO, American Society of Clinical Oncology, was presenting some updated data on a phase 1 study. And they got up, one of the panelists up there from one of the big name institutions got up there, and they were talking about the gut microbiome, and it was a panel, and they had 5 lectures, and I was like, oh, finally, this is awesome. They're gonna talk about the gut microbiome. And so they then said, well, this is really interesting. A lot of people talk about the gut. Here's some research in animals. We don't really know. And I was like, okay, so this is nowhere. But then one of the experts said, you know, 20% of the people in this audience, probably 7,000 people in there, have dysbiotic guts. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Never heard that statistic. And so I spent the next 72 hours trying to find that statistic, and it doesn't exist. There's several references to saying, oh yeah, it's been referred to, but there is no data supporting it whatsoever. And in fact, there's not a clear-cut definition of what dysbiosis means.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, here's somebody up there recognized as an expert, and they make a statement like that. And what we're just doing here is talking about the problems and the challenges that the average doctor faces, and then the general, public faces.
Yeah.
And yet they hear that, they go home and they go, oh, 20% of us are dysbiotic. And they don't even know what it means.
Right.
They don't even know what it means. And they preface that with about, an hour and a half of short lectures saying we don't really know what it means.
Right.
And I left it really discouraged. I actually text Naisha. I said, well, I think I need to take a shower, a bath, ask for forgiveness, detox, do something. Because where I am. And I said, there's no solutions.
What's very interesting, coming from the tech world, all tech conferences are about disruptive technology, right? So we were talking 15 years ago at tech conferences, robots and AI and all of these things. So now, it's becoming more mainstream, but, we were hearing about it a decade ago. Conferences are about disruptive technology. So when I shifted and I started coming to medical conferences, I was like, wait, where's the disruption? Where is the disruption? And even we went to this big conference last year, I think you were there, and they had these oncologists up on stage speaking, and there was nothing disruptive about their conversation. They would not talk about some of the most basic things, fasting and keto, and they were like, no. And this was a metabolic health conference. And so for this conference, I absolutely refused to have this conference be a CME conference for CE credits, because the minute that you do that, you're limited on what you can talk about. And that's not what we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to educate the masses. What I was hoping we could do, and it's hard to pull all these together, I wanted to bring in a bunch of influencers that could just go around and tweet and create reels and, all of these things. They need to become mainstream.
Absolutely.
They need to be out there more. We need more and more people, out there talking about it. Bob Jones is going to be speaking this afternoon, and he's going to have a box of his spinach. And then he went to a grocery store this morning and picked up their spinach. I will tweet that picture. It is going to be a drastic difference. Because
Collaborate.
It's a nutrient-dense food.
Yeah.
He actually measures, he has servers on his farm.
Yeah, we talked.
And they have the equipment, and he measures the nutrient density.
As much as, and I told him I want to walk, because my grandfather was a soil PhD at Mississippi State. And I told a story where he woke me up one morning and we went out and went to some farms. And the imagery I have is when we had gone inside into the farmer's office, we're looking at a computer, and then we walked outside, and both my grandfather, PhD, and the farmer not sat down, but squatted down and put their hands in the soil. And I remember that image, but at that time I was 9, I thought, this is ridiculous, I'm bored.
Yeah.
My grandpa's and I'm out here in the dirt, what is this? And it was hot, it was Mississippi, the Delta. But I think we have different objectives. I think we have to be frank, honest, but I do think we have to build bridges. And I like that about you, because you do seem to really focus on that, because we have to be frank and honest and say, who are our allies? Who are people that we can work with? Not that allies is a confrontational, but in medicine, there's a lot of that, where you have on one side conventional, you have on the other side the non-conventional, and they are like two 10-year-old boys on a playground yelling insults at each other. You see that today, you see it on social media. It drives me nuts, because the only thing that it hurts is patients. Because right now, those that are not in the mainstream, not in the standard of care, they're censored still to this day. I mean, the course where, I'm talking about ivermectin, mebendazole, fenbendazole, simply saying, here's what the evidence shows.
Yes.
Here's what the evidence shows. I'd say that ivermectin's a 4-letter word, but it's not a letter, it's a 4-syllable word, ivermectin. And you just can't say it. And it's like, when did science become something that was not about the debate and discourse of ideas? That system supports itself.
Yeah.
It does some great things. You break a hip, hey, that's fantastic. You have brain surgery and you have cerebral edema, you need to stereotactically maybe radiate that area to help that patient live the next day, to then do ketogenic diet and other therapies. Wonderful. But can we build bridges there?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I will say Naisha is really good at building bridges.
She is.
And, it's funny because she does get, I was actually having coffee with somebody a couple of weeks ago. It was a peptide manufacturer that wanted to talk to us about introducing peptides into our community and had made mention that, Naisha is a naturopath. She probably doesn't agree with that, which it is, just that perception. And Naisha is a brilliant doctor, but she's also a brilliant connector and a brilliant bridge maker. She wants those bridges to be there. She's not against, chemotherapy or anything else, right? It's about how we collectively all work together. What I want is to be able to provide the tools for people to be able to come together in that way and all be able to learn from each other. This community of clinicians is so incredibly beautiful because it is so diverse, and everybody and anybody is welcome if they are curious. What I think is happening is the patients are driving it. The patients are challenging the clinicians to go out and explore and do more research. And we actually had one of the clinicians yesterday say that she, had been doing kind of the standard protocols, chemo, radiation, and for decades, and had patients come to her and, well, but what about diet, or what about this, or what about that, what about detox, what about, and she would always say, well, I don't know much about it, I can't really support you in that, but go for it. And then when she got diagnosed with cancer,
The doctor.
Then she looked at all of those patients who were trying other things, supported or not supported, right? They might have been working with another doctor or not. And she automatically knew that, she needed to do some of those things, or at least understand what they were, because the patients who were exploring were having better outcomes and higher success rates. So, she's coming feeling, almost to a certain extent, a little bit humbled and humiliated, as if, to say, well, I was that doctor that didn't listen, or I was that doctor that told my patient it doesn't matter, and now I have a different view and opinion of it. And we would never want her to feel that shame. It's so the door is open for everybody, and it's all about then bring your expertise to the table. Right? Because you guys do these patient case studies. We don't call them tumor boards in our community. We call them patient case studies. You guys do these patient case studies, as a non-clinician listening in on some of those calls, it is brilliant. The collective minds. Oh, yeah. The very first one that was done was a patient who, on that call, she was months away from dying. She was already in hospice. She had breast cancer. Everything was going wrong. And they said, all right, well, if we have any hope at all, let's do these things, and then let's have her come back, and then let's do these things. And 4.5 years later, I saw this application come through to sign up for one of the programs. And I was like, is that the same lady? And so I reached out to her, and sure enough, it's her. Doing great.
See, those are the kind of stories that that really set the heart, a flutter, because it really supports what we're doing. It provides. We're always looking for affirmation.
Yeah.
We always. Am I on the right track? And I love. One of the patients, I think, that really moved you, her name's Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
I have a slide where it's side by side, taken from the same location. One is of sunrise and one of sunset. And of course, it's, the light's different, but it's like, well, which one is sunrise and which one is sunset? And I love it that one of the patients that really has drive your, experience to passion to purpose is Phoenix, because that is sunrise.
Isn't it crazy? Yeah.
But building bridges, I love words. I love imagery. I love telling stories. But tech, relationships, businesses, are these not all means to build bridges?
Yeah.
And so you have several different businesses. We talked about MTIH. Tell me about MydaVeda and Mtomics and how they're doing the same to build bridges.
Yeah. So Mtomics is the data platform.
Okay.
That is where we're bringing in all of the patients, all of their data. As you know, the process, the methodology that the clinicians go through in our program, if you are going to go through and look at all of that data, it's hours, right? All of the, I've been on consults with you and Naisha before, right? And you're looking at everything from that patient, and it's
voluminous.
It's a lot. So Mtomics is taking in all of that data, all of the genetics, all of the when metabolomics becomes a thing, organic acids, all the biomarkers.
Immunomodulomics, that needs to be a thing. It's not technically a thing, but it needs to be one.
A thing. Yeah, that's a good point. So it's looking at all of that data, and then it's elucidating it for you as the practitioner to see what the problem areas are. So it's helping you just take that from, 4-hour process to really just pulling it in, and then it shows it all to you. And in actually optimally health, markers or in range or out of range. So it's elucidating that for you, so it helps to facilitate that for you, and then it'll guide you, and it'll take in all of the different treatments that the patient is doing, and it'll start learning from the patients.
That's pretty interesting, because I always tell patients and other doctors when they say there's no science, they actually integrative oncology, integrative medicine, and that's really where I think we are, is a follower of the science. Now, we need to follow the science, we need to know the science. And science doesn't have a preference for this system or that system, as you said, just the data. Where does the data lead? But at the same time, what we have is, and I completely lost my thought there. I love when that happens. So I have 2 kids in here, and they always go, "See, Dad, you're getting older." So
the kids do that to me
I know, they bring us to that point.
Yeah.
But what we need to do is to be able to take this data and this information, and we need to now then carry that into action. So I got to cut there. I lost my thought. Just completely lost my. I know. I lost my thought.
You can cut out. Pick up wherever it is you need to pick up.
So what was I talking about?
The data, but I could go into MydaVeda.
Yeah, I had a transition point, and that's what I was going through in my mind, and I just
I'm glad I'm not the only one that does that.
It was like, goodness gracious, it was there, and it was good, and it was gone. Okay.
You need some ketones.
Yeah. Okay. So Mtomics is the data.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so we'll start right here and say Mtomics is the data bridge. So tell me about MydaVeda. So we'll do that, okay?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. 1, 2, 3. So Mtomics is the data bridge. But tell us about MydaVeda and what bridge that it so helps in this area that we're working in.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you know, there's lots and lots and lots of supplement companies out there on the market. But supplements also kind of suffer some of the same problems as, just the industries in general, where they're not targeted enough to actually start repairing. And, I'm not saying that they repair anything. I'm saying that they support, cellular metabolic health. So the formulas that we are designing are all designed for our patient population in mind. It doesn't have to be cancer, but metabolic dysfunction. And there are some things that are very specific with cancer where we have our formulas a little bit different. All of the formulas that we are doing are really targeted towards repairing and directly going after some of the cellular dysfunction that we see. So Really good example, especially in our population, we see a lot of chronic UTI patients. And then you get these chronic UTIs, and then you end up on this antibiotic train, which is not good. Now you're further destroying your immune system. And so we've come up with a formula that directly targets not just treating the symptoms, but also repairing it so that you can get out of that chronic UTI cycle. And then we've got ones that are going after directly like cell nourishment, mineralization, getting our cells feeling, like they've got the hydration that they need. And we actually put BHB in there as the carrier because often it's hard to get the sodium, magnesium, potassium to your muscles. Right. And so we use BHB as the carrier instead of a sugar to get it into the muscles. And then, we've got a lot of other, and we have a lot more that are going to be coming out, but it's all targeted towards, the kind of some of the major gaps, which it's hard to believe because there's so many supplement companies on the market that there would be so many gaps, but there really is. And then, we look at like these kind of broad spectrum multivitamins, but there's so much of everything, you're not really getting anything, and it's really hard to kind of address some of the root cause stuff. So that's what we're always looking at. We are going to actually have some other, higher end lines that we will be coming out with as well that will improve the efficacy and the absorption rate by up to 185 times. So there's a lot of new technology coming out. We hired an amazing neurosurgeon and scientist and formulary, Dr. Ahmed El-Saka. And so he is in his lab now, and he's working on, getting, and I would butcher it, but, getting all of the nanos into the nanos into the nanos so that, that it will increase the bioavailability for us. So we'll be coming out with a lot more.
Well, there's obviously, it's bringing similar-minded but different areas of expertise together. And I think my daughter who runs our social media, she said, give me a little verbiage on community here. And I said, well, community here, I think I'm going to paraphrase what I told her here. It's restoring the passion and fueling the purpose. And that's what happens when we come together, because these two companies here, Metabolic and MydaVeda, I look at them kind of as really nucleic acid change of the same double helix DNA. Because, what I was trying to say earlier, and then it just completely flew away, so hopefully you have a supplement for that, is that it's data that's driving the formulation of the supplements. Yeah. And in the integrative space, we follow the data, we know the data, but we need to add to the data. So in fact, what we are is evidence-based. We're evidence-based wherever it leads us. Yeah. And it seems to always lead us back to things that restore, remake, make whole, regenerate, which is more natural, more healing, more holistic. And so I find it interesting that those are two different companies. They're probably feeding the same. And here's an idea that I would propose. I talked about immunomodulomics. We're in this arena of precision cancer care, right? Which is no longer the one-size-fits-all approach. The right treatment for the right patient, the right combination, the right time. Yeah, the art. Yeah. Oh, it's the creative application of the science. That's everything is the pendulum has swung so hard to the science side. We have very few artists, which is that creative, presentation of the art form in painting. Yeah. And it's like, wow, how did you take that science and do that? Yeah. But we need more of that. And I think this community definitely fuels that. But the gut microbiome. Yes. The individual gut microbiome, and we are you can't even say it's the tip of the iceberg, because I think you hit an iceberg and you don't even see it because it's above the water. That's how little we don't know about the gut microbiome. But the gut microbiome would dictate, I believe, what supplements, what therapeutics we would give. Yeah. One of the things that I want to add to the program that we've done, that's being censored, by the way, because we have the 4-letter or 4-syllable word there, is what is the impact of repurposed medications on the gut microbiome? What repurposed medication impacts is on micronutrient depletion? Because that needs to be understood, that though repurposed medications can have a powerful tool, And there's a lot of people on social media that advocate for them, some good in science and some not so good.
Right.
And that really,
Or it's an all or nothing.
it irks me.
Yeah.
But there can be negative effects of that.
Yeah.
And we have to be aware and we have to be honest about that. So I think in the future, gut microbiome will dictate some of what we do, especially when we do it orally.
Yeah. I think it's the most critical, and I think I've talked to you about that before, and just being able to incorporate more microbiome therapies, FMT, and things like that. It's just not spoken about enough.
Fecal transplant, by the way, FMG.
Yes,
I love it.
transplant.
That sounds really weird.
But if it saves somebody's life,
On Monday, was me on Sunday, Sunday evening, I'm going to be flying out to our office in LA to do that. Because we think when you're working with the immune system, the research supports this. It's not just our thought. If you don't get a fecal transplant and you have cancer and you're receiving immunotherapy, you're not receiving standard of care, no matter if it's considered standard or not. That's how strongly we believe in it.
Yeah.
And that's how strongly others out there believe in it. But it's just a small number of us, and it's just growing.
well, it needs to be much, much bigger, and to all diseases. It's unfortunate today that in order to get it, you have to be antibiotic resistant. It's like just keep feeding the beast until the beast, dies, and then say, okay, now we can do it. It makes zero sense.
If you're driving profits and you're receiving profits over the course of longevity, then it does make sense. But we're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
No, but this is like, I know that there are individuals doing it. Matter of fact, one of my neighbors just did it for cancer. She was actually diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer about 15 years ago. She's done all of the things, and she was really kind of going into hospice at the end of last year. She wasn't doing very good. So she sought out and went and did fecal transplant. She's still here today.
And see, what we don't know, and it's okay to say we don't know.
Yeah.
It's okay. Is it one time? Is it regular intervals? We don't know. And then the testing of the gut microbiome, that's a whole nother problem.
Yeah.
Because it's how reliable are they, et cetera. Because we're talking about terrain. And we're talking about roots. I think these are two words that I said were very interesting I wanted to come back to. Because NASHA obviously talks about terrain. But when people talk about terrain, they think about inside their body. But what we have here are people that are talking about terrain that are an ecosystem outside the body. And these different ecosystems are communicating. One ecosystem has been dead and dying, and guess what? That's affecting the other ecosystem to be dead and dying. But what's happening here is, with these farmers coming here, they're going back to the roots. Yadi and Nasha are showing, this farm nearby where they actually healed the land. Bob Jones Jr. was talking about healing the land. That means if we can heal the land, that terrain,
Right.
that's fueling the ecological collapse within us,
Right.
then there's a potential to heal us
Right.
by partnering with them. I see what you put together here, Nasha's vision, Nasha's work, your innovation, your pioneering work. It's you're bringing together two doctors of two different ecosystems, two different terrains that are intimately tied together. And out of that, I think, is a crack in the door of possible, which is hope. And I believe that out of this is going to come something that we're going to look back on this in many years with longevity and go, look at the legacy that began here. And I see
With everybody
That's
here.
right. But there are those behind the scene, those that are driving it. So that's why I was hopeful that you were going to be able to join us, because you are a driver behind this through your leadership, through the companies, through the innovation, through the relationships that make it possible. You basically set the table, you give everybody what they need, and you put them in strategic positions, and then you go, and then see what happens.
Well, I'm just grateful that we have the people, and that we have so many clinicians and people coming to the table and wanting to have the conversations and wanting to make a difference.
Well, next time, maybe those influencers will be the bigger the add-on, where it becomes something that it's much grander, much strategic, much more influence on the policymaker sides, because we need to bring them in.
Yes. When the time is right.
Exactly. We need to bring them in.
When we have enough data.
That's right.
That's what I keep saying.
And we're getting there. We're getting there. We're moving there. But I think there needs to start to begin the cultivation of relationships to do that, because I think we are going to need them. And, it's something that I talk about, the 4 to 40 to transform. And, in this arena of social media where you have to have 3 seconds to connect, 4 to 40 to transform. We have 4 years right now where I think there are some integral changes undergoing in the healthcare system.
Yeah.
And I think that is percolating out to many different aspects. But we must understand those 4 years will come and go. In fact, we're really down to kind of almost 3 now. And we need to set forth a transformation that's going to be 40 years and goes beyond that. So we have to understand we're playing the long game.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And the people that get it, that are here that I've talked to, they get that.
Yeah.
They know that. So I can't wait to hear your answer to this question. Where are we going from here? Not where are we going, what do you hope that comes out of this?
I hope we build a new model. I really do. I hope we build a new model. I hope that in 5 years time frame, this will become the standard of care. This will be the norm. I hope that we can get outreach to a much, much broader audience. What drives a clinician to feel comfortable with something is the statistics. That's what they've been trained on the statistics. And so once we get enough data in and we can start publishing the outcomes of our patients in this community that have been nurtured by these clinicians, I think that we can start to have much, much bigger conversations that do start to integrate this more within the standard of care. I mean, we know patients are driving it. We've got MAHA now as a big movement, regardless of where you fall or what you think on the political side. The fact that it is a conversation at the White House every day is a huge deal.
How is making Americans healthy again, or making whatever population country healthy again, how is that political? I don't understand it. And when you look back through history, politics has always influxed itself into medicine. Maybe that's part of the problem, but I think it's okay. It's like science. It's okay to have a debate and discourse about the ideas. And so every time they're talking about let's make America healthy again, what are we doing that doesn't? And how do we make that better? I think that benefits the citizens of this country. Yeah. And that's what we should all be about.
Every single person. There should be zero debate about that. Doesn't matter who's in office, doesn't matter who you like or who you do not like.
No political ideology. That doesn't bear in helping your fellow man, helping your fellow woman, serving your neighbor. It has no bearing in that.
Yeah. And by the way, cancer doesn't care.
Oh, well said. It does not. It does not.
These diseases don't care what your political affiliation is. It affects everybody.
And Cindy, the cancer of today, it's not the cancer of yesterday.
No.
It's different. And so we need, talking about a new model, we need a new model, but we need collaborative partners, right? So talking about the farmers, which I can't wait to give them accolades tomorrow. But at the same time, there are those that are innovating in the similar space. So for example, one of the Walton heiresses, developing that new integrative medical school in Arkansas. And I told Naisha last night, I said, Naisha, why are people within our community not speaking there? Because what you have, and it's because there's a disconnect.
There's a disconnect, yeah.
And you have fledgling medical students, and they are hearing the integrative model. What better tool to let them hear a lecture from somebody that's been doing it for 20 plus years?
Yeah.
Now it shows, it's not just theory, it's application on a long model.
Yeah.
Then it shows I can do this, make a living, and help people. Yeah. And so and I told her, I said, that needs to happen. Why is it not? I mean, we've reached out, of course, no reply, but you got to know the right people.
You got to know the right people.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but I think that and I've always thought medical training, medical education needed to have more clinical application to the real world, where they bring in guest speakers that say, hey, this biochemistry that you go, this is bunk, That's what I do every day. My youngest daughter is a second year at University of Tennessee. Go Vols. See, it's Friday, tomorrow's football day. Just got to say that. And she asked me the other day when we were up there for family weekend, she said, Dad, I just don't understand having to worry about, molarity, isomolar and all this kind of stuff. She said, does that mean anything to you? I said, sweetie, when I do IV therapies, I have to calculate that. And she goes, what? I said, yeah, it has real application. Not every day, but it has application. And I think when we take these concepts that they're learning in the education standpoint, and then what happens is we show its application in the real world, I think that's a key aspect of how we go from 4 years to 40 to transform. Because it now builds that next generation, that legacy of doctors, which got, as awesome as Naisha is, as incredible and of a pioneer and innovator as you are, there'll be a day where you have to pass a baton.
Yeah.
And we need to pass it to people that can carry it and elevate it even more.
Yeah. And it's going to be our children's generation and our grandchildren's generation, because they are demanding the change.
It's about legacy.
Yeah.
As I say all the time, patients, you are the force vector of change. Realize it. And if you don't have a doctor, a practitioner, an advocate that lets you know that, find another one.
Yeah.
That's your power. That's your power.
If your doctor or practitioner doesn't empower you to be empowered to heal, find another one.
So how do listeners, followers, and people on social media they'll get connected to this, how can they find out more about you, more about the numerous companies that you run and oversee?
It's all on terrainholding.com. So www.terrainholding.com.
So one-stop shop.
One-stop shop. You can research any of our companies there. You can get involved on the nonprofit side, on the for-profit side. We are looking for all interested, people who want to be a part of this mission, who want to be a part of this community, who want to be a part of change.
And understand, this is not just a call to action for doctors. Let your doctor know about this organization because they need to be here. But if you're a patient, because by the way, we're all patients, okay, whether we know it or not, and you want to be involved and you want to be an advocate, I've talked to several advocates here. They are the most powerful, influential, because they connect the doctor to the patient in terms of application. Mm-hmm. You can change lives by being that go-between, that advocate that really helps the patient succeed in what they're after. So you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be a farmer, but bring them too. Anybody can be involved in whatever the way they need to or want to, because to bring forth that new future, and basically instead of succumbing to the sunset of disease, we can build the sunrise of tomorrow that's nothing but health. So Phoenix Rising.
Oh, yes.
So
well said.
I look forward to meeting her. So anything else you think to add?
No, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for joining, and thank you for the work that you do, because you guys do so much work, and I'm thrilled to tell your story, because your story, everybody knows Naisha's story.
Yeah.
And that should happen, but you're a driving force behind the success and really the growth, the scaling of what's happening. And I think that's going to be what brings us from something that is a small community to something that is a very large community that changes medicine, changes healthcare, and dare I say, make America healthy again.
Yeah.
Check out the show notes for all the supporting evidence, as well as the hyperlinks to where you can find more about all the work that Cindy does. Thank you for joining me on this Prescribed by Dr. Nathan Goodyear podcast, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Prescribed Podcast. All references supporting this episode can be found on the prescribed.com website. That's pre-scribe.com. To get your next dose of medical innovation, make sure you subscribe to Prescribe. We'll see you for your next refill.